So today, Donald Trump was at the Supreme Court and I caught him leaving. He was snoozing in the motorcade on the way back. We're gonna get into all of that. I'll show you the video that I caught of him leaving the Supreme Court. But before we get into this video today, please make sure you subscribe, make sure you smash the like button. It would really mean a lot to me and help the channel out a lot. But yeah, let's just get into this story today. Donald Trump is the first sitting United States president to visit the Supreme Court during an oral argument. Specifically, though, today was about birthright citizenship, which Donald Trump is attempting to challenge. Now, of course, this has been an ongoing saga for Donald Trump since he has been in the political public eye. He has long since desired to see birthright citizenship be eliminated. And of course, as you remember, this was a major issue for Donald Trump during President Obama's presidency. As you recall, Trump consistently said that President Obama was not a real American citizen and he was challenging his birth certificate. So Trump has a long history of going after his perceived enemies on the basis of their birth or their birthplace. But the reality of this situation, of this court ruling, would be to effectively ruin millions upon millions of Americans' lives, ruin 150 years of precedent, and ultimately it would be, and already is, remarkably un-American. Here is a legal expert to explain more about this case in particular.
And so part of the reason for the 14th Amendment, including birthright citizenship, was to remedy that. Free Black Americans demanded and said, look, we were born here, we're just as entitled to citizenship as white folks. And the framers of the 14th Amendment agreed with that and said we need to put into the Constitution a broad, inclusive principle that all children born in the United States are citizens of the United States, regardless of the status of their parents. There were some tiny exceptions, which we can talk about, but the broad, inclusive principle was intended to apply to pretty much everyone.
Well, kind of related to that, the Trump administration is arguing the 14th Amendment was only intended to cover the children of enslaved people. But since, of course, taking office again, the president has strongly supported all efforts to crack down on illegal immigrants, or even in some cases, immigrants who have filed for asylum. So what is your assessment of this executive order in this moment?
When President Trump says that the amendment was only intended to apply to, quote unquote, the babies of slaves, he's absolutely incorrect about that. At the time that the amendment was framed, immigration was a huge issue. There were tons and tons of immigrants coming to the United States at that point, and Congress actually discussed in that moment, well, is this going to apply to all the children of immigrants? They even talked about whether it would apply to the children of Chinese immigrants who faced an enormous amount of racism at that time. And Congress, the members of Congress who supported the amendment said, yes, this applies to all children of immigrants, regardless of the status of their parents. We have seen efforts to undermine birthright citizenship in the past, and they're almost always highly political and driven by anti-immigrant sentiment, not by any kind of legitimate understanding of the 14th Amendment.
And finally, and very quickly, for time purposes.
So right, there is a lot at stake here today. The Supreme Court holding arguments about this case and about birthright citizenship. And Donald Trump decided that he wanted to show up. Now, was he there to intimidate the justices? Was he there to prove a point? Was he there for basically no reason at all? Maybe a bit of all three, but what we do know is that the justices today were not having it with Donald Trump and his Solicitor General. Take a listen to what some of the justices said today during oral arguments.
Their interpretation has made a mess of the provision.
Well, it certainly wasn't a problem in the 19th century.
No, but of course, we're in a new world now, as Justice Alito pointed out, to where 8 billion people are one plane ride away from having a child who's a U.S. citizen.
Well, it's a new world. It's the same Constitution.
It is, and as Justice Scalia said, I think in the case that Justice Alito was referring to, you've got a constitutional provision that addresses certain evils, and it should be extended to reasonably comparable evils. He said that about statutory interpretation. I think the same principle applies here, and I think we quote that in our...
Do you think Native Americans today are birthright citizens under your test and under your friend's test?
I think so. I mean, obviously they've been granted citizenship by statute.
Put aside the statute. Do you think they're birthright citizens?
No, I think the clear understanding that everybody agrees in the congressional debates is that the children of tribal Indians are not birthright citizens.
I understand that's what they said, but your test is the domicile of the parents. And that would be the test you'd have us apply today, right?
Yes, yes. So if a tribal Indian, for example, gives up allegiance to...
Born today, birthright citizens.
I think so on our test, yeah. If they're lawfully domiciled here.
Okay.
And then, I'm not sure, I have to think that through, but that's my reaction.
I'll take the yes, that's all right.
Very clearly, even folks like Justice Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett, very, very skeptical of the Donald Trump administration's arguments related to birthright citizenship, saying, look, what is in the Constitution is in the Constitution. In fact, here's the 14th Amendment on the screen right now. You can read it yourself. Today was really a day where Trump was attempting to once again rewind on the Constitution. But I was actually out there in the crowd at the rally held at the Supreme Court. There were folks from the ACLU, from many other advocacy organizations who were pushing back against Donald Trump's bullshit related to birthright citizenship. And there was a great energy in the crowd. There were fantastic speakers. Here's a video I'm playing for you right now of the crowd where I was there in particular. And here is just a little bit of my report on the ground from the Supreme Court this morning. Here it is. So here I am at the Supreme Court where Donald Trump is actually there inside right now trying to intimidate the justices, but ultimately he is trying to reverse 150 years of precedent, and we are here standing up for the American people. We are here because Donald Trump has no respect for those people, and this is really a fantastic crowd and audience here at the Supreme Court where people are standing up for the Americans that are here. People who are born here in this country are citizens, and we need to keep saying that loud and proud. Yeah, so it was fantastic to be out there with the people this morning and folks who are intimately impacted potentially by this ruling, American citizens who would have their birthright stripped away from them, their American status stripped away from them because Donald Trump doesn't see them as Americans and citizens. And really what I was saying today, even at the protest, and you know what I have been saying about Donald Trump's rhetoric around this, is that Donald Trump is not the pro-America guy in this situation, nor is he ever, but he certainly is not here. Because while he is pushing for a radical idea to exclude millions upon millions of people who are born in this country from the idea and the reality of being American, we, the people, are out there saying, no, if you're born in this country, you are an American. Being an American doesn't have to be this small subset of people, these heritage Americans that the right-wing freaks like to talk about. No, it is a vast, broad swath of people from around the world who can be American. That is the promise of this country, and something that Donald Trump just simply does not and will not understand. But Donald Trump arrived at the Supreme Court. He spent about an hour there, and lo and behold, as I was leaving the rally, as I was leaving the Supreme Court, guess who I ran into? None other than Donald J. Trump and his motorcade. Take a look at this video I got of Trump and his motorcade passing by. It is quite amazing. Yeah, and you might have missed it, but there was Donald Trump in that first car. There's the screenshot there, the grab. And look, I think it's pretty clear Donald Trump dozing off on his way back to the White House. I'm sure his supporters will say that he was just resting his eyes, but I think this was amazing, right? I mean, we see him falling asleep all the time during his meetings, during his Oval Office time, during meetings with reporters. But rarely do we see him fall asleep, behind the scenes. And I think it really goes to show that this is the status quo for a President Trump who is weakened, who is tired, who is sleepy, who barely could make it through an hour of these oral arguments before just leaving because he was so bored and tired. And obviously cameras were not allowed in the Supreme Court. We have never done that. But if there were cameras allowed, I'm sure we would have seen Donald Trump falling asleep like he has done many, many, many times in the past. But this was just fortuitous that I happened to record a video of the motorcade as it passed me as I was walking back to work. And again, as you saw there, Donald Trump, very sleepy, very tired in the back seat. It kind of looks like he turns towards me a little bit, but his eyes were mostly closed. But sleeping or not, Donald Trump's regime and their decision to go after birthright citizenship is frankly one of the most dangerous and despotic things that this administration has done, because it fundamentally unwinds what it means to be an American. It unwinds the Constitution. It doesn't just unwind it, it attacks the Constitution and what is plainly written in the 14th Amendment. But it's part of Donald Trump's broader project to represent America as something that we are not. He wants us to be a nation where only a certain type of people can live here. Only a certain type of people can be out in public and be representative of the United States of America. But that's never what we have been. That is absolutely never what we have been. We are always and forever will be the melting pot of the world. And Donald Trump can go home and take a nap and think about what it really means to be an American. But that is all for me today. Please make sure to subscribe and like. It really helps the channel out a lot. And until next time, thank you so much.